So I think that is one interesting thing where a lot of people now want to. So what I understand is that a lot of people want a hybrid kind of system where they can come in
Yeah.
when they want and work
Mm.
from home when they want, right?
Yeah.
In
I
terms
think
of
that's where we're heading, definitely. All right, so that was really interesting, kind of just getting an idea of the business and how you guys started. I know recently the organization has pivoted a little bit towards from the sort of collaborative inbox space, which you guys have been in for a long, long time, to kind of that customer support space. And I'd be really interested to know maybe how that came about, the thinking behind that, and obviously for ourselves as partners that was quite interesting, and I've had conversations with some of your teams about it, but I'd just love to hear from you guys how that sort of journey happened, brought you to kind of to here.
if you look at our entire journey as a company, over the last whatever 7, 8 years, right, it has been a story of moving out from a niche to a larger space, all the time, and we basically build for a niche. We understand that niche well, and we try to find general patterns of what people are trying to do, and try to frame that into a larger problem, right? So that has been our journey over the last whatever number of years, and that is what prompted this move, right? So we were looking at ourselves as a shared inbox slash collaborative inbox product, right? And that is how we are, building our positioning and our marketing, and also
Sure,
the
yeah.
product roadmap, right? But what we, saw by looking at what customers do with our product was that people use it primarily for customer service, right? So more than 80% of our customers use it in some kind of a customer facing function. So it might not be a typical customer support use case where there are some customer support agents servicing a product. We have some kind of customer service going on, so it might be you know professionals in an architecture firm, for example, or people in logistics firms. So people who do some kind of customer interaction and had an email address where which they're using as a central point to receive customer queries, right? And that is what we are being used for. And we thought that probably moving out from this shared inbox slash customer slash collaborative inbox positioning into a customer service positioning helps us define the problem in terms of what the customer actually wants to do, and it's also going to
Sure.
impact our positioning, our marketing, and our product roadmap in the right way, right? So that is what prompted the move, right? So we wanted to frame the problem in a way so that it resonates better with what people actually do with it, and then also move to a larger problem area. Collaborative inbox, of course, it's a very defined,
A
tightly defined
challenge, yeah.
problem, but it's a problem that not too many people are aware of, right? So if you want to build a large business, which has tons of customers, you're better off defining it in larger and broader terms. So I think that is what
Yeah.
prompted the move from collaborative inbox or shared inbox to a customer
And
service product.
yeah, I think that's interesting. And do you find that there's pros and cons obviously in entering a newer, but you're not technically entering a newer marketplace, but like the redefining of the tool, means, as you say, that maybe you're competing with people, or you're
Yeah,
seen to be
absolutely.
competing with people that you weren't competing with before. And so, there's that sort of like little fish in a big pond, big fish in a smaller pond type thing. In the collaborative inbox space, you guys, were pretty dominant. Do was there concerns about that, or what's the sort of thoughts of competing against the Zendesks and the other tools? Or do you think that maybe customers would use both? I'd be sort of interested to know the definitions around that.
So no, I mean, it's a classic problem, right? And whenever
Yeah, yeah.
whenever whenever you enter an ocean, you're going to find whales and sharks, right? It's going to happen. But I
Yeah,
think
there's pros
what
and cons to everything.
so yeah, so but what works in our favor is that we are extremely differentiated. We are entering the customer service space, but we are not just another product in the customer service space, right? So you'll probably not find any other product that solves the problem from an email centric
Point of view.
perspective, right?
Yeah.
So I think although it's a very cluttered space with a couple of really dominant companies, or maybe three very dominant companies, and a long tail of large number of products, we don't look like any of them, right? We are very
Yeah.
different from
Yeah.
everything else, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is going to and that's not just a cosmetic difference. It's not very superficial. it dials down into the exact approach of how we solve the problem, right, which is very unique.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the second thing that gives us strength is if you look at the typical journey of a company that adopts a customer service product, how it happens is that they'd usually start with email and they would try to scale it. They would start getting logged out of their email inboxes, etc., right? And then they'd get frustrated and they'd move to a Zendesk or something else, right? And what we basically say is that you don't need to move, right? We are going to solve this problem for you inside where you earlier were, right? So I think that is what gives us strength. As I said, right, it's primarily because no one solves this problem in the way that we solve it, and it's very intuitive because you don't have to change the system that you're using, right? You can stay with what you're using.
And I think a lot of other organizations are moving towards making the inbox the central place. Like we've seen that with Google recently. Do you know what I mean? Where chat and rooms and calendar are all coming into our inbox. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so that idea that the inbox is the place where I live, and now with the sidebar I can pull in my calendar and I can pull in Hiver and I can pull in, all these other tools and my CRM or whatever it is I do as an individual.
Absolutely.
And I can take actions upon those while still living within my inbox. So I think you guys are, I think it's an interesting advantage that probably a lot of other customer support tools don't.
So if you look at how we look at it, right, it's actually even more natural than having your calendar in your inbox, because an email that you received from your customer is actually an email, right? There's empirically there is no sense to actually moving it out of your inbox, right? If you can solve it.
Yeah.
So that's the thought process, right? It's artificial to actually move it to a different system. If you can solve it inside email,
it is an email.
Yeah, it is an email, right? So
yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And do you kind of feel that and this is something that I've been concerned about myself, that again it's that pro and con of the direction that you're sort of taking, and that we all take as business. There's pros and, as we were saying, there's pros and cons to every choice basically. That the inbox is getting very busy. Do you know what I mean? Do you ever find that's a challenge where people have lots of add-ons and things like that, or is it a case that the use case, like who's using it within the business, maybe that's the only tool that they use? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so number one, as you answered it, right, not everyone is going to use everything, right? So that's you're not going to use a customer service product and a CRM and an HRMS together, right? Because there are different functions that use it, right? But even then,
I've answered my own question.
no, that's a part of it. But I think even then there is going to be clutter, and then probably 5 years down the line we'll see consolidation and some tools dying and some surviving, right?
Sure,
and you have to make sure that you survive and the others die, right? So that's that's a part of doing business, right? So
yeah. No, definitely. And I mean, like there is a sense of sort of app overload as well for everybody, and I think that idea of consolidating stuff into the inbox is really important. Like if I am looking at a new tool and I can't integrate it into my Gmail inbox, I'm kind of like, do I really, is that really going to work for me? Do you know what I mean? Because I need to have some sort of integration there. Do you know what I mean? I because that's where I live every day. Do you know what I mean? So I need it to have that sort of functionality. Do you guys, you may not be able to speak about it now, and that's fine if you can't, but do you guys ever look to integrate with other tools within the Google space, like chat or Google Docs or Drive? And apologies if you already do and I'm just ignorant.
No, so we are looking to integrate with Drive in a much bigger way than we do right now. And we are also looking to integrate with multiple other third-party tools in the Google ecosystem. So 2021 is going to be our year of integrations. You'll see us come out with tons of integrations with tons of different kind of products. So that's very much going to happen. Yeah.
Great. And chat, any interest in integration with chat, or?
We are thinking about it. We are thinking about it, right? So we are in the customer service space. So if there was any way to open customers, Google Chat as a website chat, as you'd use.
Yeah.
If there is anything happening on that side, that can turn into really interesting, because then you can use Google Chat to chat with your customers, and Gmail to have emails from our customers, right? And then have a single integrated experience, right? So that is an idea that we have actually thought about. So let's see,
Sure,
we'll
yeah, yeah. And you know the chat APIs and stuff. They're like chat itself is new. Do you know what I mean? We've only just moved from Google Hangouts, so we'll be a year away from it sort of maturing and feeling like a more comfortable product for developers to throw themselves into. But yeah, like the chat bots and things, again, I use the Google Drive one and I get the notifications from that. And at the start I was a bit unsure about it, but actually it's quite valuable, because I live in chat and Gmail. So I'm actually thinking of turning off the email notifications for Drive, because I'm like, well, I get them in chat, and that's when I click straight on the dock and I'm in it. Do you know what I mean? And that is really valuable. So I've often thought about that idea, of some sort of Hiver chat integration notification of something that I could quickly respond, and it would,
Okay.
I don't know, send
Makes
an
sense.
email, or that kind of thing, or as you say, the integration with the website. We use some other, I can't remember what it's called, some other chat app for our website, and it frustrates me that I have to move to that. Sometimes to chat with somebody, but it would be great if it could be in Google Chat. That would be
So
fantastic.
that's an interesting idea. So let's see, whether we can actually
Yeah, I
build
definitely
it.
sign up for that one. So kind of on that theme of roadmaps and things, what's your sort of vision for Hiver over the next kind of decade or so? Where do you guys see the company going
So
over the next while?
we one question that we fairly frequently have to answer is, why are you sticking to the G Suite ecosystem and not going to Microsoft, or and again,
Yeah.
we would laugh at it, but this is something that we have to answer a lot. And
Sure, yeah. It's a huge ecosystem. Do you know what I mean? It's a
huge,
huge,
absolutely, and the
yeah.
amount of value locked in this ecosystem is huge, right? I know, if you look at us, right, we sell a $20 per seat product on G Suite, which is actually $6 to $10, right? So we actually cost more than the platform does for many of our customers. In fact, for most of our
Yeah.
customers, right? And that basically gives you an index on what kind of value is there in that ecosystem, right? If you build something that is useful. So now I look at it in two different ways, right? We have to increase the value of what we build. So from being a customer service product, right? Can we do more? Can we open up more different use cases and functionalities which people can use in the ecosystem, right? And the second is, we have certain number of customers, but it's possible to have 100 times as many customers as we have right now, because
Yeah, yeah.
the size of the pond is very, very big, right?
Yeah.
We need to improve on both of those, axes, right? So we need to make the product a lot more valuable than it is right now, which we'll certainly do, and we need to take the product to a lot more people than it has reached right now, right? And that's kind of defines our vision for the next 10 years. That is what we plan to do.
So I just wanted to kind of finish off with talking about the current situation that we're all in, that the world is in. I think COVID is something that we can't have a discussion or a meeting now without talking about it. I'd love to hear from yourself what you've seen the impact of COVID on your own business. I know some companies in the tech sector have seen huge, positive impacts. We've been extremely busy since the lockdown. A lot of companies obviously wanting to work remotely. But also, how has it impacted your own business transitioning to working from home?
Okay. So now it was extremely easy for us to just decide one evening that we are going to work from home from tomorrow, because then everything we was in the cloud, right? So we use G Suite, and every other tool that we use is on cloud. So we only have our tables and chairs in office. Everything else is on the cloud, right? So it was extremely easy for us to just decide to work from home or any other location that we choose to work from. Uh, if you want to talk about other dynamics of how remote panned out for an 80 to 90 people company when they suddenly decided to go remote, and how that was culturally, that's an entirely different discussion, and a much longer one. But
Sure,
we are
yeah. What was so? Is about 90 people in the company? Is there just under 100?
we are 80, yeah, a bit more than 80, yeah, 80 to 90
Yeah,
people in the
yeah.
company.
And obviously, the reason you were able to transition so quickly was because you're on G Suite and you use, as you said, everything you use in the cloud. So with a company of just under 100, do you guys, you said everything's in the cloud, so you guys don't have any sort of, in-house DHCP servers
No,
or,
absolutely not.
anything like that. Everything is just cloud-based, whether it's Google or whether it's something else. And
Everything,
the tools that you use for development, all that, all cloud-based as well.
everything is cloud based, so
That's amazing.
all our, and we run, of course, we have local development environments, where everything is replicated or mirrored on people's laptops.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then, we have our code repositories and development servers online too on AWS, right? So you can work from anywhere, and that is how we're designed to be, forever. So,
Yeah. And so the transition was fairly smooth for you guys. And in terms of employee sort of, morale and like how people connect, working remotely, and how managers, like I've heard some interesting stories actually recently, only in Ireland and the UK it's become more common, of software to like track what people are doing and things like that, which I kind of find, I don't really necessarily agree with them. In certain scenarios I see why it would be useful. How has that been? Have you guys tried to have like more catch-up meetings so that people can sort of, there's serendipitous things where people chat about stuff, or, how have you sort of structured your remote working for the different teams?
sure. The problem is that it's a bit too structured, right? And as you said, right, there is no room for, in our case, one problem that I see is, there's not enough room for serendipitous things to happen, right? I mean, there are no accidental encounters that lead to a
Yeah.
useful, positive discussion, right? So, that is one thing that I think has taken a hit. But in general, I mean, when this started, people loved the fact of, the fact that they could work from home and not have to, deal with too many meetings in
The
person.
commute.
But I think
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of people want to come back to offices now, and have
Yeah,
more of.
yeah.
So I think that is one interesting thing where a lot of people now want to. So what I understand is that a lot of people want a hybrid kind of system where they can come in when they
Yeah.
want and work from
Mm.
home when they want, right?
Yeah.
In terms of
I think that's where we're heading, definitely. And I
that's
think for most, anecdotally, most people I've spoken to, that's what they want. Friends of mine and stuff like that, they want to be able to work from home, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, and then work in the office 2 or 3 days a week, and have be able to choose that.
absolutely.
Uh,
So I
I
think
think
that is
that's
where and I think Google came out with a similar statement where they are looking at hybrid work, right? So I think that is going to be the model, right? So the entire world, if you see, responded by saying that remote first is the future, and we need to go remote first. But I think more people are settling down into trying to figure out a way where they can have kind of the best of both worlds, right? And I
both
think that
worlds.
is
Yeah.
where it's going to settle down. 1 year down the line, people will try to find a way to have FaceTime, in person when they want to, and then work remotely when they want to, right? And I think we'll move to that kind
Yeah.
of system.
Because we need that human interaction, I think. Do you know what I mean? I'm listening to now. It's interesting. It's an old book now, technically. It's a remote working by 37 Signals. The guys behind Basecamp. And I think it's quite interesting because it's from like 2013 or something like that. But yet it could be written last year with how things are. Do you know what I mean? And how advanced they were. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe it was might have been 2015 actually. But it's at least sort of 4 or 5 years old, and yet they're talking about working in and we've been working remotely, as I said, for 10 years. And we're a very small company, but I think it is interesting listening to some of those discussions and how companies like that have managed to do that even back then. Do you know what I mean? Even sort of 5 or 6 years ago, but they still meet up in person. That's the interesting thing. Not that much, like it's 2 or 3 times a year, but they still do that. I think the guys from is it GitLab also do. I think they have about
Yeah,
800 or 900 employees. They also work remotely. They have an interesting way of solving the serendipitous thing, where you get into they have some system where you get into a video call and it randomly matches you with someone in the company, which I think works for a big company, and that's
exactly.
supposed to sort of help the serendipitous sort of meeting at the water cooler type idea, which I think is kind of cool. I think in a small business, obviously, it doesn't work because everybody knows each other. So,
Yeah.
you know, you know. And in terms of your customers, have you seen how it's impacted them? Have they been reaching out to you and sort of saying, "Hey, we need your solution or we need your support because our team are now working remotely"? Is that
So
something?
the month of April was, of course, that kind of a month where a lot of people reached out to us and talked about problems they were facing. We also had some customers, drop out. A lot of them are coming back now, but we tried to handle it by being extremely relaxed with our payment terms, and we deferred payments by a
Mm,
couple of quarters, and we made
yeah,
sure
yeah,
that they
yeah.
could add, and so the irony was that they had difficulty paying, but they wanted more people to come on the system because they were all going remote, right? So and we were extremely flexible about it, right? So we said that we'll defer
Mm,
all our invoices, and so we did that for a huge number of our customers, and I
mm,
think I think we are at a stage now where it seems that we have weathered the storm, and people have kind of settled down.
mm.
uh, uh, it's not that I mean we are back to growing like we were before COVID,
Sure.
but things have definitely settled down, and that initial
Mm,
distress and fear about what is going to
mm.
happen is no longer there. So I would say the months of probably April and May were a bit
Yeah.
troublesome, but after that it has been fairly settled and quite on that front.
Yeah, and we found that as well. That like April and May, everybody just went just like I'm not spending any money. It's just like everybody just retracted, and then kind of June, July, people started to kind of go, okay, this is how it is, and let's figure it out. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think April and May were like, I think people thought it would be short term, maybe. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they thought, okay, it's fine. We'll just sort of, work from home. It'll be a couple of months, and then it'll all be back to normal. And then there was the realization, I think, of like,
That's
okay,
going
this
to
is, yeah, this is around to stay. So we've got to figure out
a
what
way to,
what
yeah.
this kind of the way to do this. So yeah, I think most businesses have kind of seen, other than Zoom maybe, who just saw massive growth.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah, and I know Google did as well, and Microsoft Teams and all those sort of video conferencing tools. But I mean, other than them, I think everybody else has sort of seen that retraction, and then sort of, okay, how do we sort of
How do we
figure
work
this
around
out
this?
long
Yeah.
term? Yeah, yeah. And in terms of the impact of COVID long term, do you feel, because I've been asking a few people this, do you think things will go back? Like supposing, no, I'm not talking about vaccines or anything like that. Like supposing that's all gone, COVID's disappeared, everything is back to the way it was, normality, so to speak. Do you think that the impact it's had on work, on that sort of work-life balance and everybody working remotely, do you think people will just sort of default back over a period of time to their, you know, to working in the office? Or do you think that the sort of remote working idea is more here to stay now that people have tested it out and like it?
As we discussed, right, I think we are going to see a lot of these hybrid models where people give flexibility to people work, especially in industries like ours and yours, where
Mm,
location does not matter, and not everyone has to meet customers, and not everyone has to be dressed professionally all the time.
sure. Wearing in
There's going to
t-shirts.
be absolutely, so there's going to be a lot more freedom in terms of where you work from.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think it's going to be anything drastic as 50% of the workforce going remote and people giving up their leases, for example, right? Everyone expected
Mm.
everyone to give up their office leases while COVID hit, right? But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I don't think that's going to happen. Offices are just going to be
Mm.
remodeled to have less people in office, right? You're just going to have
Yeah,
more
yeah, yeah.
luxurious, office plans where
Mm.
you can have fun while you are in office for 2 days a week
Mm.
and
More
go back and
foosball
work from home.
tables.
Yeah, more football. So this is something that we have thought about, right? So we have 2 floors, and we
Sure.
have thought about remodeling it to be occupied by 50% of the people that occupy it right
That's
now.
interesting. Okay,
And
yeah,
and
because
and, and
if you've got all that extra space, then yeah, you can do something with it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so when you come to office, the couple of days that you come to office or 3 days when you come to office, you have a fun, nice experience, meeting the people that you work with, right? And
Yeah.
then you go back and do more serious work from home, right? So that is, I think you'll see changes like this. You'll not see drastic changes like people
Mm.
going to remote, but reasonable changes like people taking
Mm.
learning from what happened in this period to how the world works normally.
Yeah, and I think that it's a really interesting point that you make. That idea of revamping spaces or changing spaces. That like when we were talking about the fact that like if you work remotely all the time, then in person becomes like a treat. It becomes like a really, it's a really important thing, and we want to still be able to do it. But why don't we make it like a wonderful experience? Why don't we make better
Absolutely.
breakout spaces, better meeting rooms, better collaborative, spaces, so that like we've got all the, tech and whiteboards and whatever it is that we need, arts and crafts, whatever, whatever it is people need to make the magic happen, in those spaces. Do you know what I mean? And maybe more of those, and the fun stuff as well, like the whatever foosball tables and things like that. But I think that's a really interesting idea of just like offices aren't going to go away, but the space is going to change. Do you know what I mean? And be remodeled into something else. And that's interesting that you guys are thinking about that. I'm sure a lot of other companies are as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a great point to end on, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.